The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your mental or physical health. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and do not replace personalized care from a licensed professional.
Welcome to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante, a space where a nurse practitioner and educator shares real talk on mental wellness, mindfulness, and navigating life in and out of healthcare. Let's take a moment to breathe, reflect, and grow together.
All right, welcome to another episode of Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante, where we explore stories of resilience, purpose, healing, and the people creating meaningful change in our communities and beyond. Today, I'm honored to be joined by someone whose impact extends far beyond healthcare. She is a nurse, advocate, writer, storyteller, activist, and community leader who has dedicated her career to amplifying the voices of patients, healthcare workers, families, and underserved communities. I've been following her work in LinkedIn, wherein she advocates on the Capitol Hill, volunteering with organizations, supporting immigrants and families, creating educational content, and also using storytelling to inspire change. And she has shown us what it means to lead with both compassion and courage. Please join me in welcoming Lucky Longoria. Really love your name.
Oh, thank you. I like it too. Oh my gosh, what an intro. It's like, it's almost emotional to hear about yourself. A little bit overwhelming. I love it.
Yeah, sometimes we tend to have some imposter syndrome where oh my God, you're doing so much.
I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah, I think every healthcare workers are guilty with that. So before we talk about your incredible work and advocacy, I'd love to begin with a moment of reflection. When you pause and reflect on your life and career, what's one lesson, realization, or experience that has shaped who you are today?
There's a creator that I follow, Confidence Chris, and several years ago he said, if you want more, don't accept less. And I feel like that encompasses every aspect of our life, career, education, relationships, activism. If you want more, don't accept less. If you want change, be the change. We get complacent, we get comfortable, we sit in that moment of I could do more, but it's scary and change is scary. But if you want more, you can't sit around and be okay with accepting less. And I take that as a mantra for my life, for my activism, for my goals, for everything.
Thank you for emphasizing that change is inevitable and change is part of life. And sometimes change could be uncomfortable. So it's such that it allows us to step out of our comfort zone. But at the same time, for any change, there's opportunities for learning and also opportunities to do your best and find out that there's something to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those who may be meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Lucky Longoria and what journey led you to become a nurse and later realize your voice could have an impact beyond patient care?
It's always so funny to talk in third person. Lucky Longoria. Lucky Longoria is an eldest daughter. I'm a tía, which is aunt in Spanish. And there's a saying I love. Some of the toughest men you'll ever meet are firstborn daughters. And I take that to heart because as an oldest daughter, as an oldest child, I was born a protector. And I'm now agnostic, but I grew up in the Catholic Church and I still hold close to Catholicism as a culture and the teachings of Jesus as basically the lights to my path. I didn't leave that behind. But growing with that lesson, those lessons. I remember being in Catholic school and having, getting stars for, being a good citizen, getting good citizenship rewards. I've taken that to heart, like I still want, my internal gold star. Like I still want to do good, be good, and provide good for the community around me because, we're responsible to and for each other. And becoming a nurse was a natural evolution. I grew up in a Mexican household. My grandmother was a healer. She would, she would break down herbs like the seed of a avocado and put it in wintergreen alcohol, and she would rub it on you when you had muscle aches. I would get the broom swept on me and an egg rubbed on me. All the, the old wives' cures. I grew up with that. And there was something about touch and healing that was ingrained in me from childhood. I was giving massages to my dad on his back with my tiny hands at 4 years old. I was a massage therapist for 10 years before I was a nurse. So there was never not a moment where I wasn't taking care of someone. And being a nurse isn't just about clocking in and clocking out, because the community around you remains around you when you clock out and walk out the door. So your responsibility to them, not just as a healthcare provider, but as a human being, is to make sure that you leave the profession better than you found it. And I think that what has guided me in this journey has been the lessons I learned as a child, the different transitions of my career that all stemmed from, being a nurturer from birth.
And that's an amazing journey. I know, I love how you emphasize about your culture, your upbringing. Those areas could be brought to you as a person and how you deliver your care as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our foundations, and I've seen the impact of it in your work. Now, you've dedicated so much of your life to caring and advocating for others. How has your journey shaped your understanding of mental health, resilience, and self care? And August is National Wellness Month, so this is a very time.
I've been broken twice in my life. When I went through my divorce and when my father died in September of 2023 of pancreatic cancer. And I know some therapist is going to cringe out there, but I healed from that, or I survived that by staying busy. And I know that that probably doesn't sound super healthy, but I am an overthinker. And if I sit in my thoughts for too long, I can make a not great situation worse. So for me, my journey in mental health has been figuring out how to put the oxygen mask on myself first. As a Latina, as a woman, we are raised to take care of others first. And as I said before, I grew up the eldest daughter, a protector. So, that can come into contrast with, self-preservation. So my mental health journey was taking that moment to take a step back and realizing I had to prioritize myself, prioritize my health, prioritize doing what I needed to do to survive the moment, and giving myself the grace to not have to, heal perfectly. And it kind of makes me think of, the obsession that people have with postpartum women bouncing back into their bodies. I think most people say you encounter someone who's lost a family member. You give them grace, you give them love, you bring them casseroles, and that first week or two, everybody surrounds you and it's noisy enough for the whole world to quiet down. But eventually people go on with their own lives. That person is still left healing. And most people don't feel comfortable seeing the rest of the journey. They don't feel comfortable with the 2 or 3 months after someone has lost someone. How do I talk to them now? Because that transition, or that feeling of grief is no longer new, and I've had to, with my mental health, figure out not how to learn to deal with grief, but to live with dealing with grief, and it's been almost 3 years since I lost my dad, and it's not linear. There's moments that hit me hard. It ebbs and flows, like a river. And I have to be willing to accept that part of the cost of loving someone so deeply is that the reminder will always be there. And I would rather have the reminder. I would rather have the moment of grief, because it meant I had a lifetime of love. So it's giving myself the grace to know that mental health, and the journey of being solid in my mental health is allowing myself the moments of humanity and not letting it be something like a, paparazzi postpartum pregnancy where I have to bounce back. I don't have to bounce back on anyone else's timeline. I can heal on my own. And that was the lesson I learned. It's my journey.
Thank you for sharing your personal journey on your mental health. And a lot of people can relate with that about being divorced and also at the same time experiencing grief. It's a process, right? Kubler-Ross, right? We undergo denial, anger, bargaining, depression. Acceptance will be the last one, but sometimes we can bounce back, go back again to different stages. So letting is the which talk about. Now, what mindful practices or daily habits help you to stay grounded, present, and emotionally healthy?
I am big on all the small moments. I just got back from Spain, and I spent time with my best friends who are like my family. They are my family. And one of my favorite moments on the entire trip, and there was tons of moments. We went to the beach, we went to parties, we went out to eat. It was all amazing. But one of my favorite moments and one of my favorite pictures from this trip, was all the girls sitting outside on a couch outside on a patio, barefoot with our feet up, having a cocktail, enjoying each other, snuggled up. It's the relationships that I have fed into, that have fed into me, that help me maintain my wellness. It is those long-term relationships where I allow myself to be vulnerable, where I allow myself to be exposed. That's what heals me, because the people who know you best are the people who can sit with you in quiet and understand you without you saying a word. And I am very fortunate to have found that. So that's where I go. Those are my practices. Do I get to see them every day? No one gets to see their friends every single day. But knowing that my relationships have stood the test of time, 20, 30, 35 years, it gives me the security to know that I have what I need when I need it. Exercise, reading, being active in the community, they all fill something in me. But without those core relationships, none of that would bring the joy that it does, because I wouldn't have that inner contentment that I do.
And having your inner circle and having a meaningful engagement or connections with them are really important. Right? Sometimes just need like a few friends that are quality other than quantity of friends.
Right.
And we know that mental health challenges among nurses have become more visible in the recent years, yet many still suffer in silence. What do you think healthcare organizations right now and leaders are still getting wrong when it comes to supporting nurses' mental health?
I think that what hospital systems get wrong about nurses and their mental health is that no matter how how pretty the picture is painted, we're not human to them. We're numbers. And it's hard to say, because I'm very proud of where I work, because I'm very proud of the people I work with. I'm very much, invested in my patients in the community. But hospitals at large have forgotten that they're a healthcare system and not an investment firm. So I think that what they're getting wrong about nurses and other healthcare providers' mental health is that when you treat a person like a number, you rob them of their humanity, and that is automatically a weapon to diminish their humanity, a weapon to diminish, their self-worth, a weapon to diminish their health. When you ask so much of them, when you put job on top of job on top of job, when you put more on their plate, when you expect more with less resources, it's all a moral injury that you choose to inflict on the people that serve you, that you choose to inflict on the community that gets served by those people. So it's a never-ending assault on the very people you're responsible for taking care of as a healthcare system. If you don't take care of your nurses, your community won't be taken care of. If you choose to treat your employees as disposable, because once the older, more experienced generation retires, you have all these new nurses coming in, and their pay rates are less, so it seems cost effective to scoot one generation out and bring the next generation in. But does that serve the community? It doesn't. You need the senior nurses and the newbie nurses to engage with each other, to learn from each other, because a senior nurse can learn something from a freshman nurse. We are an interconnected community of different generations that each have our strengths and weaknesses, and by exposing us to each other, our patients get the best care, because it's multiple heads, multiple ideas to grab from. It's like having a group project where everybody is actually participating and engaging. You end up with this amazing outcome. So, separating them, not giving them the opportunity to have the time to learn from each other, because when you're that busy, you don't have the time to teach, you don't have the time to absorb, you don't have the time to learn. That's robbing our patients. It's hurting our healthcare providers by giving them a reason to walk away. And we shouldn't be giving them reasons to walk away. We should be giving them reasons to stay and to give the community what they deserve.
Thank you for your insights. I really love about what you said about collaborative efforts to bridge the gap between the new and seasoned nurses.
Yes.
That we should all collaborate and not compete, and
Yes.
we need to make sure we elevate our profession, and the focus will always be the patients. And I like how you emphasize also the patients and nurses should not be viewed as numbers, because we all have different stories to tell, and we all have different backgrounds. We all have something that we can bring to the table. But if we're being looked as numbers and we are replaceable, then that's something that's not good, right? We need to really mentor and allow them to stay and allow them to be empowered, right? And to be the best healthcare workers out there, because healthcare demand is ongoing, right? The care is getting more complex, right? We don't want a higher mortality rate. We want health promotion at the same time, help the community thrive rather than community suffer.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that makes your story, Lucky, to me, that is very unique is your work in advocacy and legislative engagement. You've spoken with members of Congress, community leaders, and policymakers on issues affecting patients and healthcare workers. Why is it important for nurses to have a seat at the table when healthcare policies are being created?
If you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. It is vital that we represent our patients, that we represent our coworkers by showing up. I am so fortunate to have been given the opportunity, or to have grabbed the opportunity, to get to spend a little time on Capitol Hill advocating for my friends, my coworkers, my patients. Because if not me, who? If not them, who? We have to take every opportunity we have to advocate for each other, because we are large in number, but we are small in representation. You know, the dollar seems to represent so much more than one voice. But if you have multiple voices, if you have a consensus, if you have people, you know, filling out their staffing objections and putting everything on record, it's something that we can't ignore. You know, squeaky wheels don't get ignored. You know, I am very proud to be a squeaky wheel, and I will keep on squeaking. I will keep on making noise. I will keep on being a disruptor, because without disruptors, nothing changes. And without the squeaky wheel, we get ignored. So yeah, I feel like this is just the beginning of this journey. And there are so many people that came before me who have paved the way for change. You know, being a part of a union and knowing how much the union has, not just my union, all unions have done for the everyday worker. You know, we wouldn't have the rights that we take for granted now. You know, we wouldn't have, you know, the 40-hour work week. We wouldn't have the things that seem so, you know, logical. This just makes so much sense because someone took the time, someone put their neck out, someone risked retaliation to be that noisemaker, you know? And there are changes that I'm hoping, you know, to be on the, you know, the ground floor for. I am advocating for more diversity at the bedside because I feel like from the specific community that I work within, the population, I've seen disparities in healthcare having to do with race, and that terrifies me. It breaks my heart, and it is my responsibility because I took an oath to do no harm, and ignoring something that is very visible and very problematic and not doing something about it is doing harm. It's like seeing a wet spot on the floor and pretending you didn't see it and walking away, not even bothering to put up a caution sign, and someone falls. Whose fault is it? You know, it's definitely still on your shoulders, you know, because if you see a sign that something is wrong, that something could be better, that something could be fixed, that something is dangerous, that something, you know, has long-term effects, and you don't say anything, then it's not just someone else's problem. It now becomes yours, because this now becomes a break in the oath to do no harm.
I agree with you. Like, we have an oath as nurses to do no further harm and always make sure to do good for our patients. So if we have no seat, then we have no voice. Then if we don't have any seat over there, then who will advocate for our profession? Right? Who will do it for us? Now, many nurses can feel overwhelmed about advocating for our profession and may want to make a difference, but they don't know where to start at all. What legislative or policy changes do you believe nurses should be advocating for right now?
Yes. So I personally am invested in, like I said, increasing diversity at the bedside. You know, I'm Latina, and the number of Latina nurses, you know, statistically across the country doesn't meet the number of, you know, Latinos in the country, which is that I think at 17%. The number of Black nurses doesn't meet the number of the Black population. So at some point, we have to recognize the face that takes care of us, because in marginalized communities, there is a distrust in healthcare. So how do we meet that need? We encourage, we support, we get more nurses at the bedside who reflect the faces, that are coming in to see us. I think other things that we need to advocate for is workplace violence. I feel like it should be a felony, across the country, in every state and in every unit, not just the ER. I feel like, advocating to increase, the federal loan caps for nurses who want to further their education. I feel like that's a top priority because the medical deserts are growing vaster, and we have areas where someone has to drive hours to get their medical care when they could have a nurse practitioner. But what happens when someone wants to go past their RN degree and they can't afford it? They have to go to a private institution to get a loan, and now they're in debt to serve their community. We shouldn't have nurses trading lifelong financial stress to accrue debt to serve their community, because that's what they're doing. Why would you give someone the penalty of a lifetime of debt when their outcome is to serve the community? So that's another thing I feel like we have to fight for, that we have to stand up for. And just in general, I feel like I mentioned earlier, our healthcare institutions shouldn't be investment firms. Our insurance companies shouldn't be dictating, the method of care, the medications. I feel like these institutions have no hand in the healthcare decisions. That needs to be legislated. We need to make changes to take the power away from the healthcare institution and put the power back into the provider's hands, because healthcare shouldn't be for profit, and it is a very profitable system, and that's why we are where we are.
I agree with you. Like, there's so much room for improvement on it. Especially, a lot of nurses are financially stressed of paying their loans after exit their program, and there are grants out there that are available, like the HRSA, which they could apply for. But still, a lot of private organizations, schools right now are raising their tuition fees, which makes going to nursing education, like, a lot of students will have a second thought, like, should I really enter this profession, and end up with a lot of loans. Loans are available, but it puts a lot of stress for a lot of students, like debating, is it really worth it? Is the return of investment really for me? And that could be regulated overall and be advocated for, so that we produce more quality nurses that are not looking at numbers per se. Now we're also witnessing the rise of nurse or med influencers and health creators on social media. How do you think social media is changing the public's perception of nurses and healthcare professionals right now?
I know that during COVID, during the pandemic, the nurse influencer became a way for. I love Nurse John. I don't know if you know who Nurse John is, but he talks about how dark humor is a coping mechanism, and humor in general is the nurse's coping mechanism. And the rise of the nurse influencer happened at a time when the world got an inside view of nurses and their struggle during the pandemic, during the hardest time in their lives. It was a way to reach across the social distancing 6 feet, apart. It was a way to connect. It was a way to relate to each other. I know that everybody knows a nurse, knows a doctor, but until the pandemic, no one really knew nurses. No one really knew doctors. they know more about them now. They understand what the struggle is. They understand, what the weight of the job is, because these nurse influencers have opened that window and left it open. It is, humorous. It is heartbreaking. It is, a moment, to use these experiences for advocacy, because it's a platform that we did not have before. I have been really fortunate in the last 6 months to have met so many nurse influencers that I now call my friends, because the chances we've had to connect and the moments that we've had together feel like being reunited with old friends. That feeling you get when you haven't seen someone in 20 years, but when you're, reunited, it feels like no time has passed. There's that level of knowing, of familiarity with these people who, enter my social media feed every day, because parasocially, I understand them. I feel a relationship with them. I feel a connection with them. And it's a powerful tool, one we have to use responsibly, of course. We can't, violate a patient's privacy. We have to respect each other. But the nurse influencer is here to stay. And I think that our country, our world is better for it, because, who better to get to know during a pandemic and after than a healthcare provider? We are not just nurses and not just providers. We are part of the communities around us, and, having someone understand what we do makes it a little bit easier, or gives us just a little bit more understanding when you're waiting at the doctor and it's taking just a little bit longer than you want. You're like, you know what? I kind of know what's going on behind the scenes because I've seen it, and thank God I have a longer wait than the guy having a heart attack. Yes, whatever's going on in my life is serious. Yes, my health problems need to be addressed, but I would rather be someone, with a bad cold than someone who's been in a car accident. And the difference between us and other professions is, that hospitality, like in a hotel or in a restaurant, isn't the priority when saving lives is the urgency. And I think that having this doorway into the lives of providers gives people an understanding of that. It is frustrating to go sit in an ER for 8 hours. I get it, but that is not the weight of the nurses and their jobs. That is the healthcare system. It is the fact that there is not a nurse shortage. There are enough nurses out there, but so many nurses with licenses have walked away from the bedside because they're burnt out, because of the moral injury, because, we're expected to do more with less, and having the world understand that 1 3-minute video at a time, I feel like that does the world some good.
I agree with you that we find humor as a nurse, and also how physically demanding and also emotionally exhausting sometimes on the bedside.
Yeah.
So when we see those videos, we're able to relate and be human at all. That we're not superheroes that doesn't that are not vulnerable. And I love that social media also allows people to see the human side of healthcare professionals like us. But why do you think it is important for nurses to share authentic stories and humanize the profession through the social media?
Because hospital systems want to dehumanize us in the public side. They want to control the narrative so that they don't have to, hire more staff, so that they don't have to give nurses raises. We have to maintain, our presence in the public's, eye and in their hearts and in their minds, because without that humanity, it's very easy to bulldoze over our rights, to bulldoze over our needs, to bulldoze over the concerns that we use our platform to 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 amplify. So I feel like without this media, without this connection that we have through our online presence and through the stories that we get to tell, we lose that opportunity to advocate for each other. I feel like in the last 6 months since the strike, the Kaiser strike that we were able to survive, I feel like I've become more comfortable in telling those stories. I never put nurse on my profile before this year because I had imposter syndrome, and I've been a nurse for 15 years, but I was like, ooh, like, I don't want people to think I'm, I don't know, proud of myself, which is so, it's such a weird thing. But I didn't put it on there up until this year because I didn't consider myself that nurse, and now I do, because I've realized that there's a place for every kind of nurse. There's a place for the rock star nurse who can hit every IV. There's a place for the rock star nurse that can deliver a baby. There's a place for the rock star nurse that can, calm a patient in, a psychiatric break. There's a place for all those nurses. So there is a place for me. There's a place for the pediatric nurse who wants to make sure her sickle cell patient feels recognized and believed when she asks for a pain med. There's a place for that. There's a place for, a nurse who wants to make sure that the nurses on strike in her hospital and any hospital across the country feels proud of the sacrifice that they're making, because that change will be rippled across the generations. There's a place for that, and that's what online storytelling as a nurse influencer has done for me.
Thank you, Lucky. And you built a very impressive career around storytelling, from writing and media to advocacy and also education. So, how can nurses use storytelling to reduce stigma around mental health and healthcare disparities?
I feel like storytelling and advocacy is the only way forward, because anything buried eventually resurfaces, and we have the tools and we have the online environment to make change. And the really cool thing about social media is that it touches every generation. You have your boomers, your Gen Xers, you have your Gen Zs, you have every generation consuming social media. So by using social media to tell the stories, to keep the humanity that the politicians of this country and every other country want to make you forget, then we are resisting, we are rebelling, and we are keeping the joy that people want to so easily steal from us. Joy is rebellion. And I feel that in advocacy, remembering those moments, remembering the good in each other, I think that's life preserving. I do this thing when I find a good story on social media. I share it in my stories and I put share the good. And I have 2 big files of just stories that are just good, because in this day and age, there's so much negativity out there. And we have to remind each other of the good. We have to remind each other of the powerful things that healthcare workers have gotten so fortunate to see, you know? I lost my dad, but it was his nurses that made his experience less of the nightmare that cancer can be. It was those moments where he could make them laugh, because he made everyone laugh, you know? Those moments that brought his hospice nurse to his funeral, you know? Those are the moments of connection that we can't afford to lose. And that's what storytelling is. It is a way to connect that reverberates across the generations if we allow it to. So that's something we can't lose.
Thank you. And the sense of humanity and at the same time relatability, authenticity
Yes.
on the bedside is really important. Now, I'd love to talk about the future. What gives you hope about the future of nursing? And what message would you like to leave for nurses, healthcare professionals, and aspiring advocates that are listening in today?
I feel like the future of nursing is advocacy. And I might be, biased because that's my future within nursing, but I feel like this newest generation has something that, our generations didn't have. They have, you know, they have the will, they have the tools, and they have the, I guess, the access to each other that we didn't have before. Like before social media, I wouldn't know what was going on in Boston, unless it was on the news. I wouldn't know that the Boston nurses were like on strike at one point, just like me. During my strike, I reached out to the nurses in New York and was able to connect with them. I feel like because we are now so interconnected, the future of nursing can be more powerful because we're not just a union in California and a union in New York and a union in Boston. We are now interconnected unions, interconnected nurses that can fight the larger fight because we can unite and stay united, So I believe that the future of nursing relies on the relationships that we build through these hard times. And if I were to give the next generation of nurses advice, I would say nominate yourself. Show up for every opportunity you get. Imposter syndrome is real. Those voices in your head can be so loud. Be louder. Show up for yourself. Take every opportunity. And when the doubt creeps in, do it anyway.
I love how you emphasize about showing up and also how to nominate and be visible with our profession, especially that we need it right now and we need it to be really visible and also encompassing integrity and also visibility creates like a greater impact to the community. Now, I'd love to help our audience stay connected with your work. Where can people follow you, learn about your advocacy, and keep up with the projects and the causes that matters most to you?
Well, my favorite social media is, of course, Instagram. I'm at Lucky Longoria. I am also on TikTok, Lucky Longoria. My Facebook's private because that's for my family. I'm also on Threads. But you can also follow the organizations that I volunteer with. This is about humanity, and IMDEF, IMMDEF, to follow my journey with the advocates who are the true heroes, who are fighting for, the humans that come to our border looking for a better life, and, the amazing people who stand there ready to receive them.
Thank you, Lucky. And for those people that are struggling with their own mental health right now, wherein they think there's no way out and they want to end their life or hurt others, what will you tell them if they're tuning in right now?
I would tell them to take a moment to breathe, and to know that it is always darkest before the dawn. I would say help is always around the corner. Help is within phone's reach. You are loved. You are cherished. You are remembered. Current time. And the world would be less without you in it.
And I would like to emphasize that they are not alone. Help is here all the time. We have the crisis hotline number 988 in case they go into crisis mode or in case they not contract safely. Please make sure to keep that number handy. Once again, it's not Lucky, a proud Latina. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and your heart with us today. Your work is a reminder that nursing is more than a profession. It is a platform for healing, advocacy, leadership, and meaningful change. And to everyone listening in today in this podcast, remember that your voice matters. Whether you're caring for one patient, supporting a family member, mentoring a colleague, or advocating for change in your community, never underestimate the impact you can have. If you found value in today's conversation, we would greatly appreciate your support. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante. By sharing this episode, you're helping us spread more important conversations about mental health, nursing, advocacy, and personal growth to more people who may need to hear them. And if Lucky's story inspired you today, share this episode with a fellow nurse, healthcare professional, student, friend, or family member. You never know whose life could be impacted by a single conversation. Be sure to follow Mindful Moments on your favorite podcast platform and connect with us on social media so you never miss an episode. Thank you for being part of our growing community. This is our year number 2. Until next time, remember to be kind to yourself, support one another, and make space for what matters most. August is National Wellness Month, so please make sure you practice your self-care techniques. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, very important right now. Being mindful about your feelings and emotions. And also making sure that you make your mental health a priority. I'm Pedro Morante, your host for Mindful Moments, and it's a pleasure to serve all of you. Thank you, Lucky Longoria from California. I'm so proud of you. Woo-hoo.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Mindful Moments with Pedro Morante. Be sure to follow the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. If you find value in our time together, leave a quick review. It helps more people discover the space we're creating. For updates and more reflections, follow us on social media. Until next time, take care.